To start off, warming up before every practice or match should be a priority as it helps the body get going and also prevent injuries. It doesn't have to be long or intense or anything, and I'll go more into detail on the importance of warming up in a later video, so make sure you're subscribed. My warm-up routine and Hadi's warm-up routine are very different. His is more detailed, so maybe that's why he's the pro and I'm not. But everyone's different and has their own way of warming up, so that's normal. This first practice was pretty boring since Hadi just arrived, so I didn't include the tennis portion. Just like warming up before tennis, I want to give y'all a quick warm-up before diving into this video. I'm really excited to share with y'all my experience of practicing with the 500 ATP Pro, the differences between practices before tournament compared to practices after tournament, and one more topic that most tennis players will probably never experience, and that'll be at the end of the video, so make sure you stick around for that. I'm playing with Hadi Habib here. You may have seen him in one of my other videos, but if you haven't, I'll put a link in the description for you to check out. He was in Houston to try to get into the qualifying of the ATP 250 tournament, and I was fortunate enough to train with him for a week. So let's get into it. Just doing a quick warm-up again before we start hitting. Right off the bat, I can feel Hadi's ball is faster than the balls that I'm used to. So one easy way to adjust to the speed is to stand farther back from the baseline. I think many players just go into this autopilot mode when they step onto a tennis court and they automatically stand on the baseline. So maybe try out different spots on the court to stand to see what works best for you. I didn't figure this out until late in my tennis journey, and I would also stand directly on the baseline, and so when the ball comes deep, I was late to back up and I would often make mistakes. Whereas if I stood a foot or two or even more behind the baseline, I had better timing on the ball and it was easier to get my weight behind my shots if I moved my feet. Hadi had just arrived in Houston from overseas, so to get the body adjusted to the time zone difference, we did 2 light, easy practices the first day, about an hour each. I already showed the warm-up for the first practice, and this is the second practice of the day. And the tournament is on clay court, but we're playing on indoor hard court for this practice because it was raining for most of the day and most of the week. And for these 2 practices on the first day, we're not really working on anything special or specific. We're just trying to hit a lot of balls and play a few points. Sometimes I get bored of feeding down the middle, so to change it up, you can feed it cross court and your opponent hits it back cross court and then you start the point. And then a little basketball to end day 1. On day 2, we just did the same thing here, hitting a lot of balls and playing a lot of points to get used to the surface. And to do this, no matter if the surface is a hard court or a clay court, you need to move and run on the court. It's also important to get used to the air and breathing in that particular environment, and the best way to do this is running and playing points. Tennis players travel all over the world to play tournaments, so you can be in the US one week and then Europe the next, so you want to get acclimated to all the changing factors. I talked about this briefly in my National Open series where I played in Vegas, and I explained how the air is thinner there so the ball flies more. Now, on the topic of practices before a tournament versus after, I would say for me and most pros, practices before a tournament, I try to keep it simple by getting good rhythm and playing points, especially getting in a few sets. One thing I think players neglect is certain feelings that only come up in a set or a match that might not come up in tiebreakers or off the ground points, like the feeling where you step up to the baseline to get ready to serve, or your thought process when you're up 30 love compared to being down 30-40. Another would be the feeling in between points when you go to pick up a ball. Do you feel like you're rushing to play the next point, or can you find a good pace to set your mind up to play the next point? These small details are just as important in a match as the points. And when I play practice sets, I don't worry too much about winning or losing. I just make sure that I'm going for the right shots. If I'm not disciplined in my shot selection leading up to the tournament, then these bad habits might translate into the real match. After the tournament, I'll try to focus more on my technique or my footwork, my fitness, and how I can improve. And I'll do drills that are geared towards that. So if you want to improve your game and do well in your next tournament, make sure to practice with purpose and play a few sets to get a feel of a real match. For day 3, I got to be a coach for Hadi. He connected with Juncheng Shang for practice, a top 200 ATP player who's young and climbing the ranks. I thought it was really cool to be able to kind of coach Hadi on the court instead of playing against him like I usually do. But I felt a little awkward because I didn't really know the etiquette of recording these kinds of practices. Jun Chung had his coach actively engaged in the practice, and I'll be on the other side recording from time to time. So, because of that, I felt a little awkward and didn't film too much. You gotta be professional, you know? So, the day or a couple days before signing in for a tournament, almost every single player will go to the tournament site to do everything I mentioned so far in this video, which is to get used to the feeling of your surroundings and the overall tournament vibe. After all the preparation, Hadi sadly didn't get into the tournament. In most tournaments, players are informed of their acceptance prior to the start date. However, in professional ITF and ATP tournaments, you might travel to another country only to find out that you didn't get in, which can be truly disheartening. This happens in the qualifying draw and not the main draw. If you're in main draw, you're already set. So with the sign-up deadline falling weeks before the tournament start date, it's crucial to plan your travel, accommodation, and schedule well in advance. If you're on the borderline of getting into the qualifying draw, you always have a chance of getting in since last minute withdrawals do occur due to emergencies or injuries. But sometimes everyone shows up and you just don't get in, which was the case for Hadi. I've gone through this myself in ITFs early on in my tennis career when I had no points or very few points, and it actually happened once at the ATP tournament here. Even though my ranking wasn't close to getting in, I always tried since it's so close to home. But there was one year I assumed that I had no chance of getting in, so I didn't even go on site to sign up. Well, that year turned out to be extremely weak, and if I had gone to sign in, I would have gotten in, and I still regret that decision today. Despite Hadi's setback, we won't let it bring us down. There'll always be future tournaments and opportunities, and the key is to keep working hard and to stay positive. One of my favorite quotes says, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." So over the next few days, Hadi focuses on specific aspects in his practice to get ready for that opportunity. Make sure you subscribe to see part 2 of how a pro practices during his non-tournament weeks. Thank you guys for watching. See y'all in the next one.